Let's talk to Catherine Blaiklock now, who joins us. Now, Catherine is founder of the Brexit Party back in 2019, but not a Reform member anymore. So, of course, the Brexit Party became Reform, but you're no longer part of it, Catherine.
I was never a member of the Reform Party because obviously it was the Brexit Party. It's just the same number, but yeah, it wasn't.
Okay.
So I obviously am with Rupert Lowe now.
Okay, well, let's just first of all get your reaction to the joyous morning that this is, which is Keir Starmer, the worst Prime Minister in British history, resigning. What's your reaction to that?
Very pleased, and I thought the last clip was just amazing. I actually think that it is the sort of the whole thing with which what I was coming on to talk about with the Makerfield by-election was that was sort of held on almost the wrong ideas from everybody except for Labour, because the joy from many people, including from your program, as well as myself and many other people across the country, sort of summarizes why that result happened. And it was quite clear that you had voters from almost every party voting for Andy Burnham just to get rid of Keir Starmer.
So it wasn't really a Labour victory, was it? I did tweet this, and the tweet went a little bit viral with lots of lefties piling in saying that I was wrong to say that Labour didn't win Makerfield. Well, of course, Labour as a badge did win, but my point is that the reason that people voted for Andy Burnham was A, because of his personal vote, and also because they knew that by voting to vote Andy Burnham in would mean that Keir Starmer would go. So it was hardly a validation of the Labour Party's record as a government over the last 2 years. I mean, that's exactly what happened in Makerfield, isn't it?
Correct. I don't think it was a validation of anything. I mean, what the really interesting thing that happened on that day was how the Conservatives dealt with Aberdeen South and just wiped out everybody. That was even not talked about. And, effectively, they've got the same policy on oil and gas as Reform and Restore, or and climate change, etc. But so I think the result was disappointing for Reform. It was disappointing for Restore. It must have been catastrophic for the Greens and the Conservatives. I mean, I think the Conservatives lost their deposit. Liberal Democrats were just a disaster. And the main focus, which I think that if anybody had looked at it a month out, I went canvassing about a month out, and I just meant, we love Andy. We love Andy, and we hate Starmer. I mean, those were the two things that you kept on hearing again and again and again. So
yeah. Even though what's odd, Catherine, is that Andy Burnham didn't actually campaign on the basis of policy or vision, did he?
No.
He didn't talk about what he's going to do if he became Prime Minister. And maybe he was trying to be, I don't know, less presumptive on the basis that, of course, just because you become MP for Makerfield doesn't automatically mean you become Prime Minister of Great Britain, albeit that that's his intention. So, look, maybe he was kind of pulling his punches a little bit, but he hasn't talked at all about what he would do on welfare or defence or the economy or indeed immigration and crime, all of the things that really affect us all, the things that we are disaffected by and that are making the headlines in newspapers and on news show left, right and centre. So, he gets elected with 55% of the vote without actually saying what he's going to do. Now, Lembit and I were just saying that, of course, he wants a period of time now to, I guess, put a campaign together, put a kind of manifesto together. But the thing is, the Labour government were elected on the previous manifesto. One would imagine that he's got to nail his colours just to the Keir Starmer policy mast, doesn't he, and actually enact the manifesto by which the Labour government were elected in July 2024.
Well, I think the way Labour's behaved, that they will do anything. I mean, you know that 2 days ago, before the Manchester mayoral elections, they changed the voting system. So I don't think Labour feels that they need to have anything to do with the manifesto. I mean, it was quite clear as well with Labour people who were quite different from the voters, I met a pile of them, like, we want massive nationalisation, etc. That was not what the voters were saying. But I think the other thing that's interesting about Makerfield was that, and I think both Restore and Reform got this wrong, and I'll say that even though I'm Restore, this was a presidential election. They were voting for Bill Clinton. an extremely popular person as well. I mean, really popular. And then we had two local candidates. So two parties were treating it as though we were sort of just, some just by election in Aberdeen South and we'll put up a plumber or whoever.
And we
And
all know
then,
what happened to Bill Clinton. I wonder who will be the new Monica Lewinsky in your little scenario there, Catherine. Tell me, why did Restore do so badly in Makerville? You only got 6% of the vote.
well, I think for the reasons we've just talked about, lots of people said, both from Labour and from Reform. There were no Conservatives, so that was also really interesting. Never saw a Conservative. Was that they really liked our policies, and they agreed with the policies, and I think that was why we saw the canvassing showing different numbers, because when people actually went, they realized they were voting for just one thing, for Keir Starmer. They weren't voting on policies. They weren't voting for reform. They weren't voting for Robert or Rebecca or anything else. They were simply voting on one issue. And I don't even know that they were actually, I mean, many of them liked Andy Burnham. It was quite clear. I mean, I've never been anywhere where we love Andy, we love Andy. I've never been to a place like that. It was quite extraordinary.
But at one point, Catherine, there were people within Restore.
Yeah,
I was on a show, actually, on the Dan Wootton show, with a lot of
yeah,
Restore members stroke sympathisers, shall we say.
yeah.
And there was talk, I mean, all the way up to polling day, that Restore was saying that they could win it.
Yeah, well, they were showing 20% plus in canvassing. In some areas, they were showing more than that. I think that was a couple of things. Number one, well, three things. Obviously, as I've just spoken about, the Starmer Burnham effect, which is what this presidential election was about. Number two was the fact that many voters, many people who were canvassed, agreed with the policies, but they did it to, they agree, but at this time we can't vote for you. So they said one thing and did something else. And then the third thing was, I think after the success in Great Yarmouth, there were people who were too bullish.
Yeah.
So, I accept all of that.
So, what's the future for Restore?
Well, I think obviously we're just going to plough on. I think that the real thing is, our policies on all sorts of things, whether it's deportations or halal or having British only people in elections, a death penalty, grooming gangs. I think these are really important. I think that if we can push the Overton window right, that's really important. I think there's a bit of a pincer movement going on between, in the middle, between reform and the Conservatives on one side and Restore on the other side. And I agree, it's a mess. I actually don't think Andy Burnham is going to hold an election because I don't think the polls will look good. I think he could see as well strategically maybe Restore will gain over time, and so that would be in his favour. I could also see that he might try and extend the term and change us back to a 7-year term and go for 20 to 31. That would give him a really long time. So those are sort of or change the system, and again that will depend on the Greens whether he decides that he can get a coalition of the left. That
God
just
help
depends.
us, Catherine. God help us. I can't think of anything worse. I mean, I think Andy Burnham will be worse than Starmer, who has himself been awful. But it takes us to a whole different stratosphere
Mhm.
of hurt economically, socially, and culturally, in my
Yeah.
opinion, if we end up with a Labour Green coalition. Are Restore ready for a general election? So could you field 650 parliamentary candidates if there was an election called in the next 3 months?
No, we couldn't, but we certainly could field 100, I think, with ease.
Okay, that's what you do. So you'd focus on 100 seats that you think you can win.
Well, I'm not obviously it's not making that policy,
Okay.
but that
Alistair
would.
Harrison is, isn't he?
Um, I'm not even. Alistair Harrison does most of the administration, but obviously Rupert is very involved in leading the party and what he does. So,
Okay. You're in a former life, I think you were a financial trader, Merrill Lynch,
correct.
as I understand. Can you talk to us
Yeah, also
quickly? Yeah, talk to
yes.
us quickly then about the financial markets, because I know Andy Burnham has said, I don't care about the bond markets, I don't care how the economy of the UK is priced in terms of his perception by them,
Yeah.
or in terms of what he decides to do by way of policy. What do you expect the markets to do, and gilt yields in particular? So we should, in fact, you're probably better off explaining what a gilt yield is and why it's important to the economy, as a kind of measure of how healthy things are. What do you, just explain what they are first, but then
Well,
just tell us
basically,
what you
it's
think is going to happen.
long-term interest rates. So it determines what our long-term interest rates. We have the 10-year and the 30-year, but it's basically interest rates. So the Bank of England can pump money in and hold the front end, i.e., very short-term interest rates down. But basically, we've just got massive debt. We owe everybody money, which has been issued by bonds, and we have to finance it, and we keep on interest rates go up, as we saw with Liz Truss. And every party is going to have this problem. This is just the Zimbabwean problem that the entire country carries on with.
But do you think, Catherine, I guess my question is, sorry to cut across you, but my question
Yeah.
is, do you think the markets are going to react favourably
Yes.
or
No.
unfavourably to Andy Burnham?
Unfavourably. And again, it just depends. If he starts on nationalisation of water, every time he does it, we will have a bigger and bigger problem. And I actually think it is going to be eventually the finance that just blows us into smithereens.
Or cap in hand to the IMF like Dennis Healey did in 1976.
Yes,
Catherine Blaiklock,
or
thank
maybe
you.
much worse than that. Thank you.
No, I've got to say goodbye because Lembit wants to get a word in edgeways, as always. No, thank you very much indeed. Pleasure speaking
Thank
to you.
you.
And I'm sure you'll be back on this show very,
Thank you.
very soon. Catherine Blaiklock there from Restore.
Thank you.
Thank you.